Hello, good people. Welcome to the September 2025 Scroll Report, where we scroll back through the past month to remediate any events that occurred. So, without much ado, let's get started with the first section I call Boom Scroll or Doom Scroll. Plus, a very special tip of the hat to Gavin Saunders for putting his MF Doom illustration on Creative Commons for everyone to share. Very grateful to you, Mr. Saunders. So the first boom scroll of 2025 goes to NASA and the Mars Perseverance rover, who on September 10th told us that the rover had found biosignatures on Mars last year. In an ordinary month, this could have been the biggest news of the year. Life on Mars, imagine. But it kind of got swept under the rug a little bit, so thanks to Hank Green as well for bringing this to our attention and helping us remind us what a watershed moment this is in the advancement of science. It's, even if it's not life, it's another step towards finding life in the solar system. Here's a big old boom scroll for Joseph Mackin, New York City hobbyist who has built a scale model of New York City over 21 years. He started building it when he was a child, and he went to a school trip to see the Queens Museum's famous panorama. Took him 10 years to build Manhattan alone, and 11 years for the rest of the boroughs. The project's gotten so large that it has to be broken down into panels now. He needs a place to put it. I'm thinking a museum. That would be a really good place. Hopefully the Museum of the City of New York. Mackin is now working on a mini Minneapolis. So the first doom scroll of September goes to Jubilee Media and the Surrounded web series. This web series puts one notable figure against several people who disagree with them about various, usually political topics, and has others take turns debating the notable figure after they make a claim about the topic. Yeah, you'd think that this would be something keeping the dialectic open, maintaining a free and open dialogue in the marketplace of ideas. But there's the rub. In the marketplace, this is just turned into a spectacle, a bear baiting spectacle. It was especially egregious with a July episode with Mehdi Hassan, where one participant claimed to be a fascist and voiced opposition to democracy and free speech. And that was a bridge too far. In the advancement of human thought, we don't have to go back and keep revisiting diseased ideas. It's not a free and open dialogue if they're calling for the end of democracy. It's not healthy to let the cancer have a right to live. No. The problem is that money is speech, and the participants have no stake. They've got no skin in the game except for your eyeballs. The more attention you give them, the more valid their position. It's not working. And this goes to those folks who feel like, I've just got to make one more point on Facebook and that will solve everything. That will make the change if I could just get them to hear that one point that I got. Well, since I'm all riled up from the doom scroll, might as well throw out another one there to the FCC, Federal Communications Commission, for their handling of late night political satirist Jimmy Kimmel's comments about Charlie Kirk. Boy, I hope it's okay to talk about Charlie Kirk. Maybe I shouldn't talk about him today. FCC Chairman Brendan Carr, pictured here as I'd imagine he would look like if he was a minion, went on the Benny Johnson podcast to literally talk mafia stuff. He said there's the easy way or the hard way we can do this. And I guess they picked the hard way because now Kimmel is back on the air and having the last laugh. Still, I must admit that this time the threat of boycott is largely responsible for having Kimmel brought back on late night TV. Vox.com on September 24th put it this way: celebrities, influencers, and everyday people forced Disney's hand, including threats and boycotts, cancellations of Disney Plus, Hulu subscriptions, and theme parks, Disney's theme parks, all influenced Kimmel returning to the public eye. So on that note, I'm going to throw a whole boom scroll for the comedians who had a backbone and didn't go to Riyadh. The Riyadh Comedy Festival has been going on from September 26th through October 9th in Saudi Arabia. It's part of their Vision 2030 strategy to position the country as a destination for cultural and artistic events. However, it's drawn a lot of criticism because of Saudi Arabia's poor human rights record and censorship rules contractually imposed on the performers. Several comedians were invited to perform and declined and spoken out against it. And I'm going to name those people rather than name the performers who took the money to help Saudi Arabia whitewash its record of murdering Jamal Khashoggi. My hero, Mark Maron, said in his inimicable way, I mean, how do you even promote that? From the folks who brought you 9/11? 2 weeks of laughter in the desert? Don't miss it? What I thought was the best response was David Cross's open letter, My Thoughts on the Riyadh Comedy Festival. Cross stated, I am disgusted and deeply disappointed with this whole gross thing. The people I admire with unarguable talent could condone this totalitarian fiefdom for what? A fourth house? A boat? More sneakers? We can never again take seriously anything these comedians complain about. But I do gotta hand it to you, Mr. Cross. That beard is a masterpiece. Hey, Jon Stewart, if you're paying attention, check out that beard. That's what you could be sporting if you didn't keep shaving it all the time. And a big boom scroll to the European Union, but in particular to Spain, for becoming, for the first time, solar power has become the largest source of electricity for the Union. At least 13 countries, including Germany, Spain, and the Netherlands, recorded the highest ever monthly solar generation in the new Ember think tank report. Coal's share of the EU electricity mix fell to a record low of 6.1% compared to 8.8% last year, and Spain dropped to just 0.6% of their energy was generated from coal last year. Wind power also sets new records. They're showing us the way. We see that, they are under a lot of pressure to lower their dependence on Russian oil. And these are taking major steps in that direction. And plus, Spain, it used to be one of the most deplorable colonizers in history. It used to be a literal fascist country. And now it's a shining light of progressivism for the rest of the world. Imagine the possibilities. This one's kind of a twofer. We have a boom scroll for Figma and a doom scroll for Adobe Systems. Figma is a lightweight design tool that really shined in the building and creating of website mock-ups and application mobile phone mock-ups. And of course, Adobe is the gigantic design behemoth that has a competing product called XD that's used for prototyping websites and web apps. So Adobe attempted to purchase Figma back in 2023, but the Federal Trade Commission in particular kiboshed the deal, forcing Adobe to pay Figma a $1 billion severance package, which Figma leveraged into the biggest initial public offering, IPO, of the year 2025. So Figma has gone public and is showing itself to be a viable alternative to Adobe. So this is a huge win for Figma going public the way it is now. Is it a huge loss for Adobe? Well, the Motley Fool still thinks that Adobe is a good buy. It's basically too big to fail. But I see a couple of problems on the horizon for Adobe. One is that all of these layoffs and shutdowns, I mean, with the federal government being one of the biggest clients of Adobe, it's going to be cutting massively into their contracts. Adobe also has their monetization method, their model is basically enshittification, putting less and less value on the user and more value on something else. In this case, AI. Adobe subscribers have been told that their work may be used to train AI. Adobe has since walked back a lot of that, but words are words, and AI gets trained no matter what anyone says. The other cliff for Adobe is the retirement of all the boomers who have been using Adobe products for their entire careers and are now no longer able to obtain an ROI from their license. What is Adobe going to do about all of these people who still need to use the Creative Suite but don't get paid for using it? That's like millions of people. Now it's time for Mizwell Yell at the Sky. Mommy, why has everybody got a gun? Well, actually, according to a 2023 Pew Research Center survey, only about 40% of U.S. adults live in a household with a gun, while 32% say they personally own one. And yet, according to gunviolencearchive.org, there have been 327 mass shootings in the first 273 days of the year in 2025. In the last 20 days of September, there were 27 mass shootings, more than one a day, leaving 34 dead and 106 wounded. This is the price we're paying. Now, I understand that some people are all right with martyring themselves to water the tree of liberty. But I think I'm sick of our children watering the tree of liberty, especially since We were promised that all this unfettered access to guns would keep us from tyranny. But look, we're in a tyranny, and we have all of these gun deaths. This just isn't right. I've lived long enough to have seen a time where we had sensible gun control legislation. It hasn't been that recent. It was in the mid-70s, where the National Rifle Association became a special interest group and lobbied for unfettered unregulation of the Second Amendment. And now we've gotten to the point where the Second Amendment has become the enemy of the First. In 2018, 10 years after dissenting on the Supreme Court case District of Columbia versus Heller, retired Supreme Court Justice John Paul Stevens called for a repeal of the Second Amendment in a New York Times op-ed. Stevens goes on, that decision, District of Columbia versus Heller, which I remain convinced was wrong and certainly was debatable, has provided the NRA with a propaganda weapon of immense power. Overturning that decision via a constitutional amendment to get rid of the Second Amendment would be as simple and would do more to weaken the NRA's ability to stymie legislative debate and block constructive gun control legislation than any other available option. The time has come to consider this. For all the tears we've shed since Sandy Hook, for all the blood our children have shed, and for the betrayed promise of protecting us against tyranny, it's time to overturn the Second Amendment. I know this is difficult. We've only repealed one amendment in the entire history of this nation. But it's not impossible. We can imagine it. We can manifest it. Let's do it. And hey, it doesn't have to be permanent, and there's plenty of room for compromise, but we do need to get started. This just cannot keep going this way. And lastly, we have scroll bits. So did you ever do something you regret? Didn't feel good, did it? Watching somebody else do something they'll regret? Hilarious! We got a lot of that this September when a South African pastor prophesied that Jesus would be coming back on September 23rd. TikTok's algorithmic amplification transformed that little vision into a meme ecosystem for a couple of weeks, where people were posting about how to get ready for the rapture and different things you can do. And it looks like YouTube's at it again. Not sure if this is a good or bad thing. Many tech YouTube channels have noticed remarkably down view counts since August, and was confirmed mostly by Josh Strife Hayes and Moist Critical. But they found that even with this drop in viewership, they were still getting monetized about the same amount they always were. Eventually, I think they had discovered that it had something to do with people who were turning on ad blockers and were not being counted as views. So turn off your ad blocker if you're watching this video. And there was a lot of confusion about whether that ad blocker, which is implemented when you use YouTube Premium, it's implemented by default, whether that was cutting out premium subscribers as well. So, but as I said, it wasn't affecting the money, so I guess it's really not an important issue yet. Qualcomm has just released a ARM processor for laptops called the Snapdragon X2 Elite Extreme that is very comparable to the Apple Silicon architecture, where it's a multi-core that is running cooler, takes less power, and is more lightweight than your traditional central processing unit. In addition, it incorporates the GPU, the graphics processor, into this whole architecture as well. So it's simpler, it's cleaner, it's a much better architecture, in my opinion, than the old Intel AMD architectures of the past. So I know that the benchmarks for this new Snapdragon X2 Elite has been blowing the Apple M4 out of the water, at least on the benchmark tests. However, in real world tests, the Qualcomm laptop is still lagging behind the Apple laptop, but you know what? It's just an entry, and I'm sure that we're going to see bigger and better things. I think that the graphics processing manufacturers, such as NVIDIA, should be very concerned about ARM gaining market share. But I think it is inevitable, especially as more games developers are building for ARM architectures. This month's book of the month is the Saga graphic novel series by Brian K. Vaughan and Fiona Staples. I don't know how much longer this series is going to be going. I've been reading it for at least a decade, and it's not showing any sign of coming to a resolution. But that's okay by me because I just love the story, the characters, the world building. Really great story. Very, very explicit though. So if you're underage, you're gonna need to wait a couple more years before you can read Brian K. Vaughan and Fiona Staples' saga. But sci-fi fantasy fans of all ages can enjoy Vaughan's show Under the Dome. It's based on a Stephen King novel, and there's again Brian Vaughan's influence in here is a story that just goes and goes and goes and just never seems to want to wrap up. But I like that. And I've been enjoying Under the Dome into its third season. Musically, I've been binging all month on Midnight Oil, especially the Makarata project. Very, very complex, great music. And of course, Diesel and Dust, their greatest hits album, I've been on steady rotation. I have such a deep admiration for Peter Garrett, the frontman of Midnight Oil. He has such a gravelly, grackly vocals that make you really want to listen to what he's saying. And oh God, why didn't we listen to him in the first place? God bless him for as much as he's done. He's even run in Australia's parliament to work on indigenous rights and environmental issues. The Makarata project itself is doing justice to 2017's Australian Uluru Statement of the Heart, calling for the establishment of a First Nations voice. And finally, we have Memento Mori, in remembrance of those who have passed this last month. First, we have Assata Shakur, black liberation activist who was given political asylum in Cuba after her 1979 escape from a U.S. prison, where she had been serving a life sentence for killing a police officer. Shakur, who went by the Joanne Deborah Chesimard before changing her name, died in Havana due to health conditions and advanced age, according to Cuba's Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And we have Dr. Jane Goodall, DBE, founder of the Jane Goodall Institute, UN Messenger of Peace, world-renowned ethologist, conservationist, and humanitarian, passed away at the age of 91 of natural causes. Dr. Goodall was known around the world for her study of wild chimpanzees. However, in the latter part of her life, she expanded her focus and became a global advocate for human rights, animal welfare, species and environmental protection, and other crucial issues. So there you have it, the Scroll Report for September 2025. To recap, number 1, is there life on Mars? Well, there is now. Number 2, cancer doesn't have the right to grow. Number 3, boycotts may protect your rights. Number 4, down with Mohammed Bonesaw. Number 5, less enshittification in our design tools, please. And number 6, let's repeal the Second Amendment. Thanks so much for your eyes on this issue of the Scroll Report. Please comment, like, subscribe. If you have content you'd like to contribute, reach out. I'd love to hear from you. In the meantime, please have the best October 2025 ever. Thanks again, and bye.